Thank you, Heather. I always enjoy coming out to the DFIR Summit. The best people are here. We're all learning a lot. I think it's a great community. We want to see the community advance together and contribute in any way we can. So today I wanted to talk about trust but verify, specifically when it comes to the tools that we use in digital forensics and incident response. I'm going to talk about why we need to do it. I'm going to talk about when we need to do it. And then I'm going to wrap up with a couple of examples of how you can do it. Just to give you a little bit of background information about myself, my name is Mary DeGrazia. I'm a director at Kroll Cyber Security. I also have a blog where I blog about research that I've done, tools that I've tested, and also some scripts and some parsers that I've written. I also have these available for download on my GitHub site. And of course, you can reach me on Twitter at Mary DeGrazia if you have any questions for me. But really the most important thing, it's really not about me, it's about Super Troopers. Okay, so today in this presentation, we're going to play a game in celebration, or really in honor of Super Troopers 2 coming out this year. How many of you are familiar with the Meow game? All right, so if you're not, in Super Troopers, the original one, they would pull someone over, walk up to a car, and say something like, "Meow, ma'am, do you know how fast you were going?" So in this presentation, I'm going to slip in the word meow several times. And if you hear me say meow, I want you to raise your hand. And I have some prizes here. They're these little bobbleheads. I think I've got a Deadpool in there, Hulk, and for the ladies, I've got Thor, because who would not want a Thor bobblehead sitting on their desk, right? Okay, so if you hear, just be ready, raise your hand, and either Darren or a cheeky forensic monkey will come on over and give you one. First person to raise their hand, I should say. Okay, so why do we want to validate our tools, right? We want to trust them, and you always kind of hear about this term, community vetted, right? If this tool is being used out in the community and my coworkers are using this tool and everybody's using it, you know, it must be accurate, right? This is not always the case, and this was really driven home to me in a case that I was working. We had some IOCs identified, and we needed to find them quickly on a lot of machines. Since we already knew where they were at, we didn't need to pull full disk images, so we just pulled the MFT file. And we used a parser to parse out the MFT files. And as I was reviewing the outputs, I noticed something was a little bit off. We had seen this malware typically in like you know, an app data folder, something like that. And all of a sudden, we saw the meowware. I think I saw, I'm not sure, did you guys catch it? Okay, right here. So, got to be ready, got to be paying attention. So after we found the malware in these locations, I noticed in a couple of these systems it was appearing like in a Windows Update folder, and then in another one like a program folder. I said, wait a minute, this doesn't make very much sense. So I pulled an image and I just double-checked to see, and it turned out that the MFT parser was incorrectly showing where deleted files were at. So in an instance like this, I mean, can you imagine kind of the ramifications of you know, passing on inaccurate information in our exams? It can lead us to the wrong conclusions. It can put you in the hot seat if you're testifying in court and it comes out that your tools are not working correctly or they're not accurate. That could potentially put everything that you've done you know, into question. The same thing if you're answering to a CEO of a company and you're saying, hey, you know, we found the malware here, and maybe their IT guy goes to check it and they're like, you know, it's not there, and your tools are not giving you the right information, it can put you in the hot seat pretty quickly, and that's really uncomfortable. And ultimately, tools are not perfect. You know, humans develop tools most of the times, and we're not perfect. I write my own code, and I know it's not always perfect. So tools, you know, they have bugs. I mean, we have terminology for that, bugs, right? So when we talk about our tools, everything is suspect. Just because you pay for a tool, that does not mean that it's not going to have issues. You think about the Casey Anthony trial and the cashback issue. How many of you have heard about that or remember that? This was a for-pay tool that incorrectly parsed out internet history. Which, you know, this could lead to the difference between someone going to jail and not going to jail, getting away with something or not getting away with something. When we talk about open source tools, I know that when I develop my open source tools, the nice thing about open source is you can actually go and review the source code. You know, if you want to know how a timestamp is being converted, you can go see how that timestamp is being converted. But on the flip side, you know, I have a full-time job. I don't always get around to updating my tools as quickly as I should. So sometimes they might be lagging behind. When we talk about tool issues, it's not always black and white. And I have to thank Adrian for doing this artwork for me. Got a little guy here with some tool envy. But these issues are not always black and white. And it's not always easy to pick out when your tools are not giving you accurate information. And we're going to actually walk through some real-world tool fails to kind of demonstrate that. So the first game we're going to play is inaccurate information. So inaccurate information is very dangerous because it can lead you down a completely wrong path. So I was doing some testing, and so here's a picture of a directory structure just in Windows. And then I took an image of this machine to pull into FTK to do my research. Now I'm going to put up another slide, and I'm curious if you guys can tell what might be inaccurate between the two. Now this actually happened. Can everybody see what the difference is here? It's showing deleted folders. When I saw this, I about fell out of my chair. This wasn't some new artifact that got pushed out. You know, the NTFS file system has been around for a while. I couldn't believe it when I saw this. I went back to the computer that I took the image of and looked at it. You know, it was a test machine, logged onto it. I even went into the folders. I'm like, I'm not losing my mind here, right? FTK Imager is showing these files as deleted, and they were not. This is dangerous. Could you imagine what would happen if you acted on this information? What if there was contraband material in there, and you say, you know what, we're not going to charge this guy, he deleted these folders? Or what if there was malware in there, and you went back to the client and you said, you know what, the malware's not on the system, I show it as being deleted, don't worry about it. These kind of issues are out there, and they're happening in the tools that we use. This tool has been around for a long time. We would use something like this if all of our teammates were using it and not even give it a second thought. The other issue I wanted to talk about was missing information. So this isn't necessarily bad. It can be a feature, in fact. The developer just may not want to put that information in their tool. So it may not lead us down the path of making a wrong decision or, you know, a wrong conclusion. But sometimes we need that additional data. So my example here is a Windows 8 prefetch file. In this particular parser, it pulled a file name, a created time, modify time, run count, and last run time. Now just concentrating on the top section here, can anybody tell me what might be missing that could be there from a Windows 8 prefetch file? Right, so with Windows 8 prefetch files, you actually have 8 times that program ran. So this tool is just not displaying that, it's displaying 1. So is it inaccurate? No. Did the tool fail? No. Is it a bug? No. But we could use those additional timestamps to help further our investigation. So if I have someone that's using something like VNC and connecting into another computer, I can use those 8 times, you know, to do some cross-correlation on that other computers to see what they may have accessed during that time frame. The other issue, and this is one that I think is really hard to catch, is misleading information. This can be as simple as just some vague column headings that leave things open to interpretation. Missing time zone information. So in this one, there's no time zone information listed with these dates, right? An examiner might jump to conclusions or might be used to working in UTC or local time and kind of infer the wrong things out of what the tool is showing. And I think the other thing that's really difficult is when a tool just parses partial data, especially when it doesn't give you an indication that it didn't parse everything. This became really clear to me when I had to work with the Thunderbird email default profile. So in this case, I opened it up and I saw that there were about 7,000 emails. The first tool that I tried didn't pull anything. Now, when a tool doesn't pull anything, that's really easy to tell, right? You have a 2 gig file, it doesn't pull anything, you know something's wrong. But when it only pulls partial data, like half the emails, that might seem reasonable, right? I have a 2 gig email file, it pulls out half of the information. How would you know that it didn't pull 3,000 other emails? And one of those emails could be your smoking gun that you needed. And all of this is based off of real test data in real world situations that I've come across in my exams. The next thing I wanted to talk about is examiner error. Now, this is a big issue. I saw someone over here. Okay, so examiner error. Now, how many of you have heard about that story? Because there's always someone that imaged their own hard drive. I know it's been passed around because I've worked at several places, right? I don't know if tool verification is really going to help with that, but I think how we can avoid examiner error is the more that we understand the artifacts that we work with, we reduce those situations where we're inferring wrong things or not noticing that our tools are working correctly. So when do we need to do our verification? Do we do it just when a new tool comes out? We get a brand new tool that parses internet history, so we use it and we check it against the tools that we're currently using. Or what about a new operating system? Windows 10 comes out, so everybody in the community that's writing great tools, they'll check the new OS to make sure that their tools are working correctly. Or what about when there's a tool update? How many people remember when NK6 came out? How many people immediately jumped to NK7? I heard a lot in the community, I'm going to wait a while to make sure all the bugs get worked out, right? So when a new tool comes out, we also need to be testing and validating our tools. But what about in between minor versions, right? Because usually when someone pushes out a minor version, it's to fix bugs. Well, here we go back to my example of Access Data FDK Imager. Here we have just a minor change from 3.132 to 3.146. And this is when, somewhere in between here, this deleted folder issue came up. So as you can see, even when there's a minor change in a program, sometimes that can introduce a huge bug. So I propose in the community that we need to be testing our tools all the time. Every single time that we work a case, every single time that we use a tool, we need to be checking the outputs to make sure that they make sense. And this is really easy to do. You just take a step back. You think about the totality of your exam. You think about the artifacts that you know and what you know about them. And just take a step back, look at that big picture, and see if your tools are giving you the output that they should. And this can be kind of easy to do. So here's an example of a directory listing with a deleted folder up on top. Can anybody tell me what may not make sense about this? So here we have a deleted folder. What about all the folders underneath it? Why aren't they deleted? That does not make any sense. Now, is this because I'm not understanding how the tool's presenting the information? Is it because the GUI on the tool's kind of messed up? I mean, why is this happening? Here's another example. Can anybody tell me what might be a little bit off about these file listings? Yeah, the file sizes are all 0. Sometimes when you're working with this, it may not be as clear. If you're doing timeline generation, these prefetch files might have been spread out all over the place. So an error like this may not be as obvious. But when we're working and looking at our outputs, sometimes just stepping back and looking at the outputs and asking ourselves, does this make sense, can really go a long ways to helping to vet the tools as you work with them on a daily basis. Okay. So we've talked about why, and we've talked about when, and now I want to talk about how you're going to do it. Are we lost? That whole row. Okay, you guys, rock, paper, scissors afterwards. All right? Okay. So when we talk about... Oh, that's excellent. You guys can fight over Thor. Okay. He'll like that. So digital forensics incident response. Digital forensics is a science, right? We need to approach this in a scientific way. You know, we don't want to be like Beaker here where we blow up the lab. We need to test our tools against known and expected results. And we can do this by using some of the data sets that are already out there. Like NIST has some data sets we can use. Now the issue with their data sets is they're kind of small, you know, they're not very current, and they're not going to address some of the very specific artifacts that we deal with. The other thing we can do is we could generate our test data. In Sarah Edwards' talk this morning, she talked about how she took her cell phone and how she did some of this tracking. And when she was doing that, looking at the timestamps, she found out that these timestamps were each off by 9 minutes. Now, she would never have known that if she had just grabbed someone else's cell phone and looked at the timestamps. How would you have known that they were consistently off by 9 minutes unless you don't generate your own test data to validate your tools? The other thing we can do is use real-world data. And I like this approach, too, because, you know, like, let's say you're doing something like internet history. There's no way you're going to be able to generate 2 years of internet history to really put your tools to the test. And you're also not going to come across all those weird one-off situations that we kind of see out in the wild. But ultimately, I think the best approach is to use a combination of different sets of data to really make sure that your tools are working correctly and that you can really trust those results. The next thing is something called dual tool testing. In this, we take one tool that's known and trusted, and we run that tool, and then we compare that output against whatever tool it is that we're trying to validate. Eric Zimmerman did some great testing recently on shim cache parsers. But what he found out, and one of the issues with dual tool testing, is you really have to know that the tool that you're kind of benchmarking against is accurate. He found out that there were a couple of shim cache parsers out there, and one was actually based off of the code of another. And both of them had the same issue. So even though if you compared those two tools, the output would have been the same. They were both wrong. So when you do something like this, you really have to make sure that the tool that you're testing against is giving you accurate information, and that tool has been verified. The next thing you can do is actually look at the raw data. And especially if it's an artifact that someone's already done some research on, you can go and find the white paper. Like Mandiant wrote a great white paper on the shim cache. Here's an example again of a prefetch file. So here you could go out to the forensic wiki. You could pull up, you know, the structure of this prefetch file, and you can actually see where those file time offsets, those 8 file times, are supposed to be at in the raw data. And then you can go in and you can actually look at that. So if I have a brand new program, you know, that I want to test on prefetch files, the way I would go about doing it is I would actually, you know, execute a program 8 times, document what time that I ran those 8 occurrences, and then you could actually go in and you can go as far as you want. You can go in and manually convert the timestamps, or you can use an automated approach. The other option is to use a native tool. When I was doing my research on the Thunderbird parser, and I eventually wrote a parser for the Thunderbird email, I used the native viewer to go in and view it because I found that my tools weren't consistently showing me, you know, how many emails. So I figured, well, what's the best way to do it? I'll open it up, you know, in Thunderbird and see how many emails it's showing me. Of course, the disadvantage to this is that forensically there may be some data there that a native viewer isn't going to show you. You can recover deleted data from a Thunderbird email profile, but you're not going to see that in the native viewer. So each of these methods kind of have their advantages and disadvantages. Really, I think the best way is to combine these methods, right? Don't rely on just one method to do your verification, because as you see, they all have weaknesses and they all have strengths. So in order to get the best I don't know, superpower here, you need to combine these methods. So maybe you test it with the tool, you go in and you look at the raw data, or maybe you open up the native viewer and go look at the raw data. So by combining these different methods, you get stronger results. So just some final thoughts. One, know your artifacts. Coming to a conference like this and listening to talks like Eric Zimmerman's, where he goes into the registry and he explains the binary format, knowing your artifacts will really go a long way. That way, like for instance, when there's misleading information, you'll go, you know what? I remember learning about the prefetch files in Windows 8, that there's supposed to be 8 timestamps there. Ultimately, our tools are just that. They're tools for us to use, not to rely on. We're the important tool, right? That's why we're all working and we're all having, you know, we all have jobs, because someone ultimately needs to take that information that the tool is given. Ultimately, it falls upon us as examiners. Do you think in court, you know, that the tool is going to get discounted? Or I guess the tool may, right? But ultimately, it's up to us as examiners to vet the results that we're getting, to make sure that they make sense, and to make sure that we're getting accurate results. Check the release notes of programs when they get released. Sometimes they'll discuss or they'll say this bug got fixed in a previous version. Or they may mention, hey, in the next version, this is what we're going to look at addressing. Check the GitHub for issues. If you're using open source code, go and look at the issue tracker to see what bugs people ahead of you may have already found and may have submitted that just haven't been addressed yet. That's a really great way to find out what may not be working correctly in the code, or maybe it's just not supporting that. You know, I know if someone's like, you know, there's a brand new version of Mozilla out, your parser doesn't support it, they put it on GitHub. At least that way, before you start using the tool, you'll know, okay, it's not going to support these things. And then if you find an issue with the tool, let the developers know. This is how we can really grow as a community. You know, don't keep it in, share it. Like, I want to know when there's issues with my tool. I want to know when a new version of Safari comes out and my tool doesn't support it. Let me know, and I'm sure a lot of the other people here feel the same way. Sometimes I can't generate that data or that situation that caused a bug in that program because I didn't even think that that existed. So let us know, and so that we can fix it. And then share your test results. When you see an issue with something, you know, don't be afraid to blog about it. Of course, you know, be gentle, right? We don't want to shame those people that are sharing all their time and their spare time to write these tools. But let people in the community know what you're seeing and what kind of issues you're running into so that they can be aware of it until those issues in these programs get fixed. So that's all I have on testing and validating your tools. Are there any questions?